Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Peak Your Politics. Thanks for joining us. My name is Stephanie Phillips. I am your host for today, and I'm flying solo. My co-host, Dennis Silvers, is not here today, but we'll be back next week. We have a great guest for you today and a great show, but just want to remind everybody early voting starts on the 22nd. So make sure you get your ballots and get them filled out and get out to vote. And a lot of times the judicial candidates are the ones that people don't know anything about. They don't hear about them and don't get to go to the meet and greets and see these people. So we've had a bunch on our show, and we have another one on today. Her name is Lindsey Moores, and she is running for District Court Department 17. She's a graduate of Oregon Law School, also graduated with honors from UC Davis. And she holds a bar license in 4 states: California, Nevada, Washington, and Oregon. She has been a prosecutor for 11 years. She was promoted to Chief District Attorney on the SVU department in Clark County. She's prosecuted over 2,000 cases, including over 40 jury trials. She has practiced civil law in Nevada and Oregon, and she interned at Lone County Public Defender's Office. And she also has run 10 marathons, and she was a rodeo princess. So we'll have to ask her about those things. Welcome, folks, everybody. Lindsey Moores, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Stephanie?
I'm good. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're super busy, and I know this campaign process is super busy. How has that been for you?
It's been a little bit of a whirlwind. This was kind of an interesting department where Judge Villani retired after July 4th. So that sent the remainder of his seat directly to the general election. And so there are 3 of us. We've had a very limited time, and we've been trying to make the most of it. So it's been a whole new experience.
And what made you decide to run?
So I've been a prosecutor here for 11 years. We had a brief, I call it a sojourn to California based on my husband's military service. But I think I was getting a little frustrated. We have some quality judges, but I've noticed sort of a trend of judges being afraid to make a decision. They're worried that they're going to get overturned by higher courts. And I understand that. No one wants to be overturned. But at the end of the day, as a judge, literally your job is to make decisions. And so having the wealth of experience that I have of being in the courtroom every day, I thought that I could be of benefit to the community in that regard, because indecision has never been one of my flaws.
That's good. And sometimes these judges take a long time to render their decisions. And sometimes I know there's a huge backlog of cases, and a lot of that was due to COVID and things like that. So what's the answer to getting these through the system a little quicker without, letting these people off and just kind of negotiating down, and just kind of letting these people off the hook? How do we balance that?
So I think a lot of it boils down to the department. And I think as a judge, you have to hold people accountable to timelines, because I've unfortunately had to tell so many victims recently, if the defense attorney asks for a continuance, there's not even a point in me objecting, because I've never once won that objection. And I think that as a judge, you need to run your courtroom efficiently. There is a huge backlog of both criminal and civil cases. And the thing about it is judges have to hold people's feet to the fire, because we weren't expecting COVID-19. It's been a totally crazy time for us all, but it happened. We're faced with it, and we need to work through this as efficiently as we can.
Do you think sometimes with trying to get through these, and they are negotiated, that these people that maybe should have a stiffer penalty, they kind of get off with lighter sentences, or they get off with, because they're not really going to trial and they're just kind of negotiated out?
I think that given the increase in crime rate that we've seen, the recidivism rates, the jail is now a revolving door. I think that, we are seeing cases that are negotiated to less than what they're worth purely out of necessity. for a variety of reasons, for the backlog, for the understaffing that was also related to COVID-19. It's one of those things where we're not operating at full capacity. And because of that and the backlog, I very much so think that that happens, unfortunately.
And the cases that you handle the SVU unit, which is the sexual victims unit or special victims unit, which that deals with child sex crimes, trafficking, things like that. And trafficking, I talk about that all the time. That is such a huge problem in Las Vegas, just because of the kind of city that we are. How do we fix that? Are they not stiff enough penalties? Do we need to go back to our legislators? Where's the shortfall in that?
Well, I think you bring up a good point about sort of the nature of our city and how that we're probably always going to have somewhat of an issue with regards to trafficking. I think we have pretty stiff penalties as it is right now with regards to child sex offenses. I mean, sexual assault of a child under the age of 14 is a 35 to life. So there we have some very stiff penalties, which is great. And then within those penalties, prosecutors have discretion to negotiate, which you do need because unfortunately, I always quote my favorite, one of my favorite law movies, but it doesn't matter what I know, it matters what I can prove. And I think that we have to have that discretion to negotiate. It's good to have those high penalties, but we have to have the discretion to negotiate because unfortunately, when you have cases like this, sometimes the only evidence you have is someone's word. Like it's purely what that child says. And we can get convictions on those, but I've seen a change in our jurors where they are less likely to convict unless there is more corroboration by way of DNA, by way of other people seeing something, by way of a confession. And so, unfortunately, the entire time I've been here, I feel like the pendulum has been swinging that way to more leniency. And I've been told it's going to swing back, and I just keep waiting for that swing.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with those types of crimes. It shouldn't even be negotiated at all. And maybe that would be more of a deterrent if these people were getting, the full extent of the law. And as far as discretion and all of that, I know judges have a lot of discretion. So these types of cases, when they go to a jury trial, and when it comes to sentencing after a conviction, is it the judge that issues the sentence, or is it the jurors that vote on that? How does that work?
For every crime that entitles you to a jury trial, so that would be gross misdemeanors where the punishment is up to 364 days in jail, as well as felonies where the punishment is over a year up to life. With the exception of first degree homicide, all of those sentences are going to be decided by a judge. With regards to first degree homicide, that is a jury. The jury will deliberate on that sentence unless the defendant waives that right, then the judge would be the person imposing that sentence.
So how do you, with everything that you've seen, everything that's a lot of years and a lot of cases that you have prosecuted, and you've seen a lot and probably the worst of the worst, how do you, as a judge, how would you keep your personal emotions and your personal biases maybe out of that when you're rendering a decision, knowing all the things that you know and all the cases that you've seen and prosecuted?
Sure. It's something that I've had to do throughout the entirety of my career, right? You have to compartmentalize at some point, or you're just not going to make it doing what I do. And my husband, he's a pilot in the Air Force, and they teach that a lot in the military, the ability to compartmentalize, because when you see these terrible things and you have to deal with them on a daily basis, you have to find a way to separate those from your life. And then as a judge, I have to say that it's really, really important to abide by the judicial canon of ethics. And it states that judges need to be independent, they need to be impartial, and they need to conduct themselves with integrity. So while I have a background in criminal prosecution, I have a background in civil, I have a background in being a human, I have a background in being a wife and being a daughter, and all of these things are going to make me who I am. But when I sit on that bench, I can't have an agenda, because if I wanted to pursue an agenda, then I would become a lawmaker. And as a judge, I'm a law interpreter. Even if I don't agree with the law, I just have to interpret the law as it stands in the state of Nevada.
Right. How important is judicial temperament?
It's very important. So I actually, it's funny, I never really thought about it before, but I've been asked that question a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in front of judges that have refused to let me be in their courtroom unless I were wearing a skirt. I've been in front of judges that
Wow.
have thrown books at jurors. I've been in front of judges that tell me I talk too fast. I do talk too fast. I get that. And the thing is I think what's really important about a judicial temperament is that you are the face of the law in that particular courtroom, right? You're the one enforcing the rules. You're the one rendering sentences, rendering judgments, making decisions. And it's really important that you take that position seriously and that you act in a respectful, first and foremost, manner towards the people in front of you, towards your staff, towards everyone, and that you keep your cool. And I can tell you that after being in the courtroom for so many years, I've gotten very good at saying, "Thank you, Your Honor," when inside that's not what I'm saying. So.
And would you welcome people to come into your courtroom? A lot of people don't know that, they could be an observer or come into a courtroom. So is that something? And I think maybe, the community is not so involved with the court system. Of course, that's not a place that you really want to be. You don't want to have these
Sure.
instances, right? Because they're usually not good.
Sure.
So how do we
Right.
get the community involved in, wanting to be a part of that system?
So I was trying to get rid of that shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very much so an advocate of that, and I'll tell you why. So I grew up in a very small town in Eastern Oregon. My dad was an attorney. I was involved with the legal system through mock trial, through a program called Teen Court, where teenagers actually got to serve as the jury, the attorney for very small level crimes for teens. I was involved in getting to understand that system from an early age, but I think it was because there was so much access because of the size of my town. It was 12,000 people, so
Mm-hmm.
it was very welcomed. Like almost every school year, you would go to court on trips. And I think that when you begin to learn something and you come to understand it, it makes it way less intimidating. So that if you are there, be it for a civil reason or a criminal reason, you're like, okay, I got this. Like, this isn't that scary, because I think we're just afraid of what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the more that we're aware, the more that we can take advantage of the benefits that we have, because our judicial system isn't perfect, but it's the best that of any country out there, and we are really provided a lot of protections and benefits that we don't make use of.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about, do you know about the remove or retain bill that was presented? And do you think that that should come back around and be something that we have in our system?
Well, I think, I've been asked about a lot of things sort of related to that in terms of, are elections better, or are appointments better? I don't have a good answer for you, because I'm not sure. I think that there are benefits to both sides. I think that, what you're talking about, could there be a benefit? Yes. I just am not, like I said, there's a reason why I'm running for a position where I want to interpret the law. I am not a policymaker. I'm not a lawmaker. And I certainly wouldn't serve to do that in a position like a judgeship, where my job is just to interpret the law.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think every single judicial candidate that I've had on, I ask this question. And you guys, the threshold is very low for qualifications just to be on the ballot, to run to be a judicial candidate. But given the amount of discretion that you guys have and the enormity of that seat and power that judges have, do you think that you should submit to a psych evaluation before, or every judge or candidate should be submitted to a psych evaluation before they're put on the ballot?
So I've never actually been asked that question. I think that mental health is always important. I think that anyone who works in the criminal justice system can tell you the importance of that and how we've seen it affect crime rates, recidivism. We've seen what it does to family. And I think, fortunately, as we've moved in society, it has become less taboo, and people are openly taking care of themselves because, if your decision making ticker, your brain isn't working right, then I don't know how you can take care of yourself or do your job or do anything else. In terms of a psych eval required, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I think that there are many jobs that might be just as serious, if not more serious, that don't require that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in that regard, it might not seem fair. And so, I would be hesitant for jobs that are, you're still going to be an at will employee. And yes, you're in a very powerful position. But I think we might better use that to give to our politicians before taking office. Um,
Good
but
idea.
yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I always joke that we should have an aptitude test for citizenship.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm kidding, but
Makes
certainly
sense.
that wouldn't be a bad thing. But yeah, I don't know on that. Honestly, I think that that's a novel idea, and if constructed the correct way, it could be really positive in a variety of different occupations.
Right. You have two opponents, right?
I do.
That are running. So tell people what sets you apart from both of your opponents. What makes you different?
Sure. So my two opponents, I have one. Her name is Jen Schwartz. She's a public defender, so she's been opposite me for the entirety of her career. I can tell you that both her and I have very different judicial philosophies. In that, she believes that the judicial system needs reform with regards to criminal justice on the opposite way of which I believe it needs reform. I think that we have gone too far in her direction. That has proven not to work, and that's why we have rising crime rates, exceptionally rising crime rates in our city. So I believe, especially with regards to her, I am the better candidate because I live in this community. I
Mm-hmm.
have friends, family in this community, and I have a gun in my bedside table based on a case I prosecuted that was a home invasion gang rape in a very nice area of town. And the judges, quite frankly, haven't been doing their job with regards to community safety. I am absolutely a better candidate than Ms. Schwartz in that regard. My other opponent is a private attorney. He was a personal injury attorney. His name is Adam Gans. He has zero criminal experience. And I
Mm-hmm.
can tell you that this is not an area of law that you come into with zero experience and expect to be effective. Right now, District Court 17 is a split docket. It is half civil, it is half criminal. I have heard Mr. Gans say that, I don't have any civil experience. That would be incorrect. I do have close to 2 years of civil. Certainly, the majority of my experience is in criminal. But at the end of the day, a trial is a trial. And I've done more jury trials than both of my opponents. And this is a jury court department. So I think that my position on law and order, I think that my experience with regards to over 40 jury trials, and I think the fact that I've practiced in 4 different states and that I've passed those bars, I'm smart. I know what I'm doing, and I've seen how they do it in other places. I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't, and I would be an excellent addition to the bench.
Yeah. Would you say that you would be tough on crime? It sounds like you would be. And I know a lot of voters, they hear that she's going to be tough on crime, then they're going to vote for you. Is that how you would characterize yourself?
Well, I think that a lot of people would stereotype district attorneys, say we're tough on crime, and then public defenders are light on crime. Here's my thing. Do I believe I would be tough on crime and hold people accountable for violent cases? Absolutely. Does that mean that I wouldn't show compassion for first-time offenders on smaller property-type crimes where you could actually see them benefit and become a productive member of society? Yeah. I just the way that I look at it, and this blows my mind every day in court, is there are laws for a reason. If you
Mm-hmm.
break them, then you should be punished for breaking them. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'm not saying I'm going to try to seek the death penalty on some petty theft, but the law doesn't even allow me to do that. And I
Mm-hmm.
just think that we've unfortunately gone too far. I had a judge just the other day that gave a child sex offender 6 months probation.
Ugh,
That's never going to be okay in any civilized country
no,
for me.
that's horrible. That's horrible. My goodness. And that's why we have reoffenders for that very thing right there. And he's just going to go out
Yeah.
and do it again, I'm sure.
I
Um,
literally just heard, I was on the elevator today and I was talking to a public defender. She goes, yeah, this guy that I just got credit for time served on a couple months ago, I just heard he got picked up for murder.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
So
goodness. That's terrible. Um, do you deal with Veterans Court very much? Are there cases, many cases, where you would be able to have the litigant go through that and that be of benefit to them?
So we do have a lot of great specialty courts here in Clark County, and obviously, I'm married to a veteran. I
Mm-hmm.
very much so appreciate our military and want to avail them of any privileges that I can. So right now, I that would not be my department. Could it be switched at any time to where I would be overseeing Veterans Court? Yes. Would I have the discretion to send defendants to Veterans Court as a sentencing judge? Absolutely.
Okay.
So I certainly, if that's an appropriate, based on the nature of the crime, if that's an appropriate resolution, I would love to see that. Currently, I'm not involved in the actual administration of Veterans Court in the DA's office because we have attorneys that handle our specialty courts, but I handle to Veterans Court many times over the course of my employment here.
Mm-hmm. I was on your website last night and reading a bunch of stuff about you. That's where I got the marathons and the rodeo princess, which I'll get to and we'll ask you about that. But I was looking at all the endorsements. You have veterans, you have police endorsements. There's just a bunch of them. So do you sit for interviews with those? Do you fill out application after application? How did you earn all of those?
A lot of questionnaires and a lot of interviews. But yeah, I've been really fortunate to have a lot of support. First and foremost, from my law enforcement community. That means a lot to me because I work with law enforcement every single day and I see what they do for us. And, that was really meaningful for me to be able to get those endorsements. I have gotten a lot of union support. I just recently got the support of the Laborers 872 Union, Culinary, the Southern Nevada Central Label Council. I have gotten veteran support from Veterans in Politics and Voice of the Veteran. And I have it's been very flattering, and it makes me feel really good that people think that I would do a good job.
That's awesome. And you do some volunteering work with shelter dogs that I read. Tell us about that.
So in one of my wedding vows, I promised my husband I wouldn't get, and I phrased it very cleverly, too many more dogs. And within a week of being married, we had been involved with there was formerly a boxer rescue here in town. It has gone out of business, but we adopted, we were called a foster fail of within a week of being married, of Murph, one of our babies that we have now. I've also volunteered at the Animal Foundation here, just in terms of the animals just need walking, and it's one of those things where I love doing it, but it's also really hard for me because I really want to take all of them home with me.
Yeah.
I also had the ability to do that when I was in California at the Riverside County Animal Shelter, but it's basically just spending time with them, socializing them, helping to understand, what type of house placement is good. Some dogs are going to be an only dog home. Some dogs can't have small children. Some dogs can't have cats. And so it's just anything like that, donating money and dog treats and dog beds. But I'm just a huge animal lover.
Oh, that's sweet. I love that. Now, tell us how you got into running marathons and all that. That's a lot of marathons. And where were those? Was that
Yeah.
here?
So I've ran 5 marathons this year. So in
Oh
addition
my
to
goodness.
running for office and working a full-time job, and yeah, so I ran my first marathon in law school. I ran two, and I wasn't very fast. And then I took about a 10-year break, and I decided I wanted to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I started running a lot, especially during COVID, and was able to knock an hour and 20 minutes off my time, and I was able to qualify for, and I ran the Boston Marathon last year, this year, and I'm now qualified for the next 2 years. So
Wow,
it's pretty
that's
exciting.
amazing. And then
Yeah.
tell us about being a rodeo princess. I love that.
So yeah, the rodeo. When I met my husband, he goes, "You were a rodeo princess? Were you like 7?" And I was like, "No, I was 20." Um, so I'm from a very small town. I grew up very agrarian, like showed horses in 4-H, showed steers, hogs in FFA, was president of my FFA chapter. Um, Both my parents grew up on cattle ranches. So there's a very famous rodeo in Pendleton, Oregon, which is about 45 minutes from my hometown. It's one outdoor rodeo of the year, the past 10 years, I might add, at the Professional
Wow.
Rodeo Cowboys Association. So this was 2003, I was selected to be a princess. There's four princesses and a queen, and this is hilarious. So literally 20 years ago, the budget for each of our clothes was 15 to 20,000. Like they take it
Wow.
seriously. Like we are the ambassadors. I have a full leather riding outfit, purple, might I add, purple with
Wow.
teal accents. So yeah, it was a great experience. I got to go around promoting this rodeo. That's a big economic boost to my small community. I still go back every year and have a brunch with the girls that I was on roundup court with. We're all very good friends, have been in each other's weddings, and yeah, so that's my rodeo princess story.
That's awesome. I love it. I like to see the personal side to judicial candidates. And, like I said, a lot of people don't really get to know you guys and they don't get to come to events and really see you guys for who you are. So seeing that personal side, and thank you for sharing all of that. People, you're real people. You're not just sitting up there on the bench and
Totally.
ruling over the masses. So before I let you go, can you tell people what events you have coming up, your contact information, how they can reach you, and donate also because campaigns are expensive and they cost money. So give us all that kind of information so people can get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I have tomorrow night I'm at a Meet the Candidates in Southern Highlands. Just on Monday, I was at an event for the Vegas Voice. Tonight is another Meet the Candidates in a different area, kind of off of Lake Mead and Buffalo. I'm forgetting Desert Breeze, I believe. So those are what I have coming up this week. In terms of contact, I have my website is Lindsey, Lindsey, for the number four, Judge, JUDGE.com. And that has all of my contact information. It has a direct phone number to me. It has my email address, which again is Lindsey, Lindsey, at Lindsey4Judge.com. It has a mailing address, but I love hearing from voters. I love hearing from people inquiring because I just think it's so important to have an educated voting populace. So
Yeah.
I would welcome any contact. I'm on Facebook as well as Instagram. But yeah, I would love to hear from anyone that would like to speak with me.
And if anybody wants to volunteer or knock doors with you or anything, they
Sure.
can call you
Yeah,
and get in
absolutely.
touch. Yeah, that's one
Yeah.
of the races that I get calls for a lot. And well, mostly who to vote for. Who are these people? And because
Yeah.
that's, the ones people don't know anything about. So thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate it. I know you had a case today and you were super busy, and I'm glad this actually worked out that you could come on.
Totally. Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. And I really appreciate the effort that you're making because it's so funny how people will spend all of this time on, our state senate and federal. And I get that. And those people are important too. But strangely enough, these lower ones might have the most practical effect on people. And it's where there's the most lack of information. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and people don't really know how much it's can affect them or would affect them until they're in front of a judge for whatever
Yeah,
reason, whether it's, a
sure.
DUI or you got in an accident or somebody sues you or you have to sue someone or you get divorced, there's all kinds of reasons to be in a courtroom and, having really good judges that are going to be fair and balanced and not biased and serve the community. It's super important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you,
Absolutely.
Lindsey. I know I'll see you soon at probably some of these events, but thank you again for taking the time. And that is going to wrap it up for us today, folks, for this episode of Pick Your Politics. Thank you for joining us. And don't forget to vet your candidate, get to know them, watch these podcasts, go to the meet and greets and the events and find out about your candidates because early voting starts the 22nd and election day is November 8th. That's coming up soon. We will see you next week. Thanks so much.